Today's guest, a former star hockey player who founded the Canadian Women's Hockey Championship. Women's hockey wouldn't be where it is today without Rhonda Leeman Taylor. Joe Tilley's Great Canadian Sports Show coming up. Our guest today hails from Kingston, Ontario, former player with the Queen's Golden Gales and, of course, the Red Barons. Won the 1975 OWIAA Championship, a member of the Kingston Sports Hall of Fame, helped establish Ontario Women's Hockey Association. She was chair of First Canadian Women's Hockey Championship, first woman board member of Hockey Canada, and the author of Offside, a memoir. Ladies and gentlemen, Rhonda Leeman Taylor. Rhonda, welcome to the program.
Thank you, Joe. You humble me.
Well, I just finished reading your book, Offside, a memoir, challenges faced by women in hockey. Great book. Co-authored by your grandniece, Denby Whitmarsh, by the way. That's pretty cool. And love the book. A portion of proceeds go to the Grindstone Award Foundation. Tell us, first of all, about the charity.
Grindstone helps those who are underprivileged be able to play the game, whether it be providing ice time or mainly providing hockey equipment. And their focus has been recently up in the the native areas where there's no money hardly for boys hockey, let alone girls hockey. So they've been very good at expediting the development of the game in areas that financially would not be able to participate.
Right. Well, that's it goes throughout hockey. It's an expensive sport to play. It's tough to get ice time, and equipment's expensive, and everything else. So, sounds like an awesome charity. Book has also led to a movement. The movement is called Offside, Making Her Story. Hashtag Her Story. Obviously, a play of words there. And tell us about the website, and tell us about the movement.
Well, the movement is a springboard from the book. In the book, I was trying to bring the women's hockey program into respectability. For when I played back in the 60s, we were often the victim of teasing, and you're playing a man's game. Whereas, once the women's nationals developed, it became obvious that the game was here to stay as quote unquote a woman's game. The book springboards a bit further in that it goes for equity and just not equality. Equity and being able to get the ice time, get the finances, right up to the pro athletes. It's pretty frustrating to the Offside membership when you see the women, the winners of the women's pro golf make the same amount of money as the number 10 placement in the FedEx Championship that same weekend. So we're striving to not just for women's hockey, but we are focused on women's hockey because that's in my DNA. But we're focusing on any sport that is not getting the respect and the visibility that they truly deserve.
Yeah, probably the only sport that I can think of where it's even Steven in terms of money and everything else is probably tennis. And
exactly.
I don't think there's any reason why it shouldn't be the same in any other sport. It doesn't make sense to me.
Oh, exactly. And what's most frustrating for me, Joe, is that in most households, it's the woman who controls the spending of the dollar. So whether they're picking up, what deodorant they're picking up, what shampoo they're picking up, what any product. And these are the companies that are sponsoring these major events. Women need to get behind women's sports and saying, if you're not being equal to the women's sporting program, I'm not supporting you as a consumer.
Well, you see in the book where you dealt with a lot of that as you were coming up and making your voice heard. When I read the book, the word that pops into my mind a lot is resiliency. Let's talk about your resolve and why you decided to enter the male-dominated sports of ice hockey.
Well, I grew up in a family of 7, and there was a rink in the backyard, a community backyard rink. There was a park in Kingston, Ontario called Victoria Park that also had a rink from almost Christmas to spring break. And to get onto the big rink, you had to play hockey. And I didn't want to be a goalie, which, anybody who couldn't skate, that's where they went to. So, I made a point of developing my skating skills and just wanting to play. And I had 2 brothers ahead of me, Joe. And one brother played, junior hockey with Silaps Jr. and Denny Kearns, and at one point was coached by Dick Cherry. So and Dick and Don Cherry. So
okay.
I grew up in a hockey community, a hockey world. So it was just natural that I saw I saw the enjoyment that my brothers got from the game. I wanted to be part of the game.
Was there any pushback within your family for you making an attempt to play?
I look back now and there was no pushback in my family and saying, no, you can't do it. Part of it was because we were such a large family. My brothers usually were able to get the skates and the equipment that they wanted, where I was always being provided with the hand-me-downs. And I remember that when I first went out to try out for the Red Barons, I borrowed a pair of skates from a friend, and I think I wore like a size 6 men's at the time, and they were like size 9. And you know what? I just filled the skates with old socks and did my best.
Right. Probably a little bit of ankle skating in the beginning, I'm guessing, with size 9 skates on size 6 feet.
Yeah. I look back at that, and my skating skills were fairly strong because of the outdoor ice and being prepared for cracks and everything. But so it was amazing. I think I was at that stage in my life where I could have worn anything on my feet and skated somehow with some sort of grace. I don't know, but you're right. I probably was on my ankles more than I knew.
Yeah. I had a buddy of mine who had skates that were too big for him, and he was an ankle skater. But man, could that guy score goals? Oh my goodness! So anyway, so you didn't get a lot of pushback from the family, but outside of the family, what kind of things were told to you that would happen to you if you decided you wanted to play hockey?
Well, it was unfortunate, and I'm proud of it now that women's hockey was probably the first group to recognize, the quote unquote queer community. Women's hockey was actually organized by, not, it wasn't organized by them, but it was supported in the earlier days by a variety of individuals. And you know what? Nobody shunned on those individuals. They were just other girls that wanted to play the game. And I think that society could learn a lot from women's hockey in regards to that. And we were dealing with that back in the 60s and 70s.
Yeah, there was a time when women's hockey was more acceptable back in the 20s and 30s, et cetera. Then it seemed after the Second World War, everything changed, and there there was a kind of a movement to ultra feminize women, I suppose, and your job is to stay in the kitchen, et cetera, and take care of the man, and that's obviously worked against people like yourself who wanted to play the game of hockey.
Exactly. And I was teased at school, whether about my sexuality or just teased about, you don't belong in that game, go play basketball. It was just it was just not the society that I was growing up with within the school system. There was a few people who recognized the hockey capabilities that I had at the time. But more than anything, there was that, like, why are you playing the game?
Right. So then that continued for quite some time. We had Sammy Joe Small and Cheryl Pounder on the show a while back, and here's what they experienced a few years after you, Vic.
In the 60s in Winnipeg, there was girls' teams, and then there was this whole movement that girls should not play men's sports. And so they created ringette, they created softball, they created netball, which were all these equivalent sports for girls. And so that was still in existence when I was about to sign up for hockey. And it was really only because my father had a sister who had played sports, and she was older, and he kind of looked up to her, and so he knew that women could play.
There were a few times throughout my career, I made a boys team, got chased into a dressing room by an angry parent because their son had been cut for me. There were multiple things like that, but on the other side of it, there were multiple wonderful experiences. A lot of people that were very supportive in my life, and I was fortunate to have the opportunity to play with sort of the Angela James of the world and look up to them, some female mentors who basically said, you can do this. And
so thank goodness for people like yourself and Angela James. When you hear comments coming from Sammy Joe and Cheryl, does it spark any memories for you?
Well, one thing that I ran into when I was in university was they created this wonderful game out of North Bay called ringette, and the government put a lot of money into ringette. They felt like, wow, this is a game that girls can play, and it's competitive, and let's throw our support behind this, because in a way, the parks and recreation departments of the world supported, not of the world, but of Canada, supported the ringette movement. And there was grants going on. I remember at the Red Barons, we got a grant to go out and teach ringette to young girls. And what our payment was ice time for the Red Barons to practice with. So, we were battling an uphill battle, and nothing against ringette. It's a great game, and it's developed quite lovely. But the two games evolved totally different, Joe. Ringette came from the top down. It got created, it got support by recreation departments, and it got pushed down into the grassroots level. Whereas the women's hockey program came up from the grassroots level. We were the scrappers, we were the fighters. In Kingston, we had a lawyer, Cookie Cartwright, and she made sure that we got ice time, and it was, every small community had that initiative to come up from the grassroots. And I think that's made the women's hockey program very strong. And Joe, if you were to take a look at hockey statistics right now in Canada, there's more females registered with Hockey Canada than there is males.
Wow. That's an incredible turnaround and a testament to the work you've done, no question. So what about all the, the crazy stuff that you guys would hear I know that Sammy, when her and her dad were standing in line to register for hockey, somebody said to her father, turned and said to her father, you know that if your daughter plays hockey, she won't be able to have children. And then the other thing is women who get hit in the chest with pucks and sticks, etc., are going to develop breast cancer. What were some of the craziest, dumbest things you ever heard?
Those were the main ones. That women don't have the women. There's going to be a much higher level of bones being broken. There's going to be a higher level of concussions. It's not a reflection of whether we're women or not. It's a reflection on the game itself. We're no, you know what? At the end of the day, the strength of a woman it cannot really be limited by the game that they play.
Right. Yeah. In the book, you talked about that is, the best ultra marathoners are female. And there's other sports where women rise to the top. Now, so let's go back and tell us about the Red Barons and your role models back then.
Oh wow! The Red Barons, they played a big role in my life as I was growing up. I was with these women probably 2-3 hours a week, and then we were traveling across around the province playing games and tournaments. The team was spearheaded by two individuals, Cookie Cartwright and Annabelle Twitty. We celebrated last year 50 years of existence. There is a film out on the Red Barons, Joe, if you ever want to see it. It was shown at the film festival in Kingston and Belleville, Ontario. And we actually, this ragamuffin team, because we never had equipment that matched, became one of the powerhouses of Canada. Our team, won most of the championships, and in my book, I write about this team called the Mossport Jets came to Kingston to play the Red Barons, and this Mossport team got off. They all had matching tracksuits. They got on the rink. They all had matching equipment, and they were touting a record of a couple of hundred games and never had been beaten. And the Red Barons taught them something. The Red Barons taught them how to lose, and I can tell you, it was the first time in my life that I saw a fight break out in women's hockey. They just were just so aggressive, and besides, they were emulating the hockey that they were seeing in the States, the Philadelphia, the Broadway Bullies,
Right.
and things like that. Where I think in Canada we always hold near and dear to our hearts the original six. And I always, Joe, love to compare women's hockey to that of the original six, because taking out the checking, it becomes a game of skating and puck control and passing. And it's an art.
Yeah, it was skill that won in the original six, no doubt about it. If you look back at those teams, the successful teams were the ones that had the most skill, and then the Flyers came along and changed things for a couple of years. But I can understand that the Mossport team being a couple hundred and going to Kingston and deciding that they're going to mop the ice with you guys, and then losing, they didn't take that very well. But you talked about a documentary, Kingston Red Barons, Born at the Right Time, and you talked about Catherine Cookie Cartwright, who founded the Red Barons. But we actually have a clip from that. We did do our research, and we watched the film.
Awesome,
Vic, if you can roll that, yeah, roll that clip.
We could have a team. We could see what we could find, and I guess in about October we sort of, they knew a few people who played ball, so these were kids that were relatively athletic. So you just sort of spread the word. We're going to have a hockey team, so come on. Have you ever played hockey?
How major of a contribution did Cookie make to the women's game?
You know, Cookie is one of the unsung heroes of the women's hockey program in the world, because she actually created the first, chapter or, guidelines for the Ontario Women's Hockey Association. And I think that Cookie was actually the first president of the OWHA. And of course, what did she do? I was at that time working, I graduated from Queens. I was up in Kapuskasing. She said, Rhonda, come on down. You're going to represent Northern Ontario. And I was one of the first directors of the OWHA. And Cookie was, she just played such a big role, not just in Kingston, not just in Ontario, but Canada and the world, because she set up the initial women's hockey program, the first one ever in the world.
So how did you get the nickname Honda?
Oh, that was Cartwright. Cartwright. I think she had trouble with her R's. I'm not sure. But an interesting story about Cartwright is that when we were trying to come up with a name for the Red Baron, for our team, we thought the Red Baron sounded really good. The Red Baron was aggressive, but there was a gentle side to him. So we Cookie actually sent a letter to Charles Schultz and said, "We're organizing a Red Baron. We would like to take Snoopy as our mascot. Could you provide us permission to use Snoopy?" And Charles wrote back and says, "I love the game. I'm so happy that a women's hockey program is taking it on. You have my blessing." So one of our top selling T-shirts was Snoopy playing hockey in a bird bath, and it says, "Happiness is never going into the corners."
Yeah, there were some great. I saw that there was some great memorabilia that you guys were able to use, and Charles Schultz signed off on everything, which was just amazing, right? To get that, but he was obviously very supportive of the movement. So I'm going back a little bit now. The Hockey Night in Canada All-Stars, led by Brian McFarland, Bill Hewitt, had a game against a women's team back in the 60s. First of all, let's just look at that, the post-game interview. Vic, roll that.
And I feel a little sorry for you. Of course, I told Billy before the game started that these kids were better. You come in here with 6 men. I told you didn't have enough. You underestimated the strength of them, and now you find out.
Well, I know Bill is so dejected over there. I'm afraid he's going to break down if he comes on again. We're all very crestfallen, Jack. We never expected this terrible defeat here to be afflicted on us by your girls' hockey team.
Well, there's no, Chris, when you get beaten by a better club, I don't think it's any disgrace, Brian. You fellas, how many games have you played? How many have you won?
Well, we're batting .500. We beat the Leafs 2-1, and then we lose to the girls. And I think it's more.
So when you look back at that, what would you say? Was that helpful for the movement? Was that a step back? I know Brian McFarland, we've had him on the show. He was very supportive of women hockey and very, especially down the road. But what are your thoughts when you see that?
I think the guys thought they were doing us a favor. I honestly believe that they were stepping up. We had a very similar situation in Kingston. The Red Barons played a local media team, and I remember going into the corner and just fighting for the puck with the guy, and finally I just put my skates into the play and came out with the puck, and he said, you guys are serious, like this is all in fun, but we weren't there to be a spectacle. We were there to show that we do have the skill sets. And Brian is close there because he does acknowledge the skill sets, but The little bit of sarcasm there,
Yeah.
we probably could could live without, but the women's hockey program learned to maximize our strengths when dealing with scenarios such as that, because those scenarios were quite common.
Well, you talk about the game versus the media team, and I played in media hockey games before, and I can tell you right now, everybody is there to win. So when he turns around and says to you, "Oh, you guys are really trying, aren't you?" Well, I can guarantee he was trying, and everybody else over there was trying, because nobody likes to lose. But certainly nobody in the media, that's for sure. So the Red Barons were honored by the city of Kingston a few years back, celebrating it was recently, more recent. It was last year, wasn't it?
Yes, it was. Yep.
Yeah. So the 50th anniversary of the founding of the club. Very cool ceremony with the town crier announcing the official proclamation. And Mark Potter was there. He was president of the International Ice Hockey Hall of Fame. And here's a clip from Mark.
It gives me great pleasure to tell you about a pioneering group of female hockey players who are celebrating the 50th anniversary of the founding of their team, the Kingston Red Barons Women's Hockey Club. The team was active in the 1960s and 70s, playing in the Quinte League against Picton, Norwood, Belleville, and Sterling. Not only did they play exciting, smart hockey, they ran hockey schools for girls who organized and won provincial and local tournaments. What they did helped lay the groundwork for the development of women's hockey in Canada. Some of the players were also instrumental in reviving women's hockey at Queen's University and the establishment of the Canadian University Women's Hockey League in Canada. On behalf of myself and the hundreds of thousands of girls who've had the opportunity to play hockey, I say thank you. You, the Red Barons, are the true champions. Sincerely, Hockey Hall of Famer, Jana Hefford.
So great ceremony. Great that the city of Kingston honored you. What are your thoughts when you see that?
It just makes me very proud, and those women are my sisters. I talk to them regularly. We've been through university together, and like 50 years later, like we still pick up the phone and talk to each other. And they were passionate, and everybody self-funded themselves. There was no, we might have done things like bottle drives or things like that, but we were self-funded, and we did amazing things with the little that we had. But Joe, going back to it, we were a really, really good skilled team at that time.
Very good team. Angela James came along after you did, and she had some additional challenges to deal with, and she was on our show a while back. Let's roll that, Vic.
Some of the challenges, absolutely, as a young Black girl, and then also being a female in sport. But one thing that always was a great thing was that, I always had a team behind me. So that was always a lot of fun. Some of the fights that we used to have as a result of different situations that occurred.
So you talked about that, your teammate, the strength in numbers, and there was something about that, that cohesiveness, and that you guys were a unit, and how important was that?
It's really important. And even going back to Angela James, I played a bit with Angela James. Angela James played in the first Worlds that I organized. And there's even that bond there. Like, I was laughing. I was just going through Toronto International Airport last week, and I heard somebody yell out, "Hey, Rhonda!" And I looked around, and there it was, Angela James. I was heading off to Vancouver, and she was heading off to Halifax, and it was just so neat that women's hockey brought us together, and our relationship is strong enough that we call each other's names out, going through the airport.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. And how cool was it to watch Angela and Cami Granato get inducted into the Hockey Hall of Fame? Was that how big a moment was that for women's hockey?
That is significant. That was such a big step. And you know what? It's the Hockey Hall of Fame. It's like at last there's a little bit of a crack that the female hockey players are coming through. Um, I have a group behind me that actually nominated me to the Hockey Hall of Fame as a builder of the women's game. But the Hockey Hall of Fame is still not quite sure how to address the building side of the game, But I'm thrilled that they're taking a look at the they're taking a look at the players, and I'm sure we're going to see hopefully every year at least one or two players nominated because they truly deserve the nomination.
A big step for women's hockey, of course, was the formation of the first Canadian Women's Championship. Tell us about how that came to be.
How that, I look back at that and wonder how was it ever pulled off? It was in January. The OWHA sort of said, Frank Champion Demers was the president at the time, that said, if we're ever going to take the women's game to the next level, it's going to have to be Ontario that does it. And we need to have a championship and ensure that it gets visibility so that every young girl wants to play the game. Because at that time, the women's hockey program was mainly, older teenagers and women. The development of the grassroots movement was very minimal, and we knew in order to grow, we had to have the grassroots movement in place of the 2 and the 3 and the 4 and the 5-year-old girls wanting to play the game. So we created the women's, decided to move forward with the women's world, and right after that, we went after. At that time, Joe Clark was in power, was the Prime Minister of Canada, and his wife, Maureen McTeer, played university women's hockey. So we reached out to Maureen McTeer, and I can remember going to her office in the Parliament buildings in Ottawa and meeting with her, and she was just so supportive, and she had Abby on board. Abby Hoffman was always on board. But she, all of a sudden, Air Canada was there helping with flights, and we ended up having Diane Jones-Kanahowski, who was Maureen's best friend. She was there supporting the women's nationals, and also CBC was solicited to say. At that time, I think they had I forget there was a weekend sports program. And they came down and they filmed the game. So it was a major undertaking. And I remember the arena manager, Thelma Learn in Brantford, and she said, well, we're going to have this insured. And they had an insurance policy through the rink, but somebody had to sign for it. And, I just thought, I was like 28, 29. I had nothing. I owned nothing, maybe my car, and that was it. So, you know what? I signed the liability clause saying, I'll take it. And I signed it, and thank God nothing ever happened. But, that was my naivety, but also that was my passion, that no matter what, there was going to be no roadblocks. Oh my gosh, to become a Canadian event. Hockey Canada stepped in. Abby Hoffman said, Hockey Canada, this program needs to come under you. And they stepped in and they said, well, these are all the elements that have to occur before a team can attend the nationals. They have to be a champion at the provincial level. And, it was just like all these rules and regulations within a 4 months was thrown at us. And, I was living, breathing, and eating the worlds, not the world, sorry, the nationals, to pull them off in in that quick time. And, I was so naive because I was in charge of the budget. And, I'm sure if it had not come in, I would have been the scapegoat. But lucky for me, everything came in on budget. And, that was the launching of Hockey Canada's women's hockey program. And I ended up becoming the first director of the Female Council. And from there, I sat on Hockey Canada's board of directors.
So you're personally liable, and I think probably Cookie might have advised against that. You signing off on that. You're personally responsible financially and everything else. You really put yourself on the line there. But talk about getting sponsorship for the event, because that kind of worked out well, and surprisingly well, I think, didn't it?
Yeah. We just. I was working it with some people were coming into. I was working at that time with Hockey Ontario, and Joe, I don't know if you remember the Roy McMurtry report on the violence of hockey in Ontario. That was way back in the '60s, and out of it came some recommendations that every coach had to be certified as a coach. Every referee needed to be certified as a referee, and various referees certification levels, pending the level of hockey they played at. It was the evolution of the coaching trainer certification. And this time, I salute Bob Firth, who passed away just years after that. He created the trainer certification, which is now part of Hockey Canada's program. And then out of the Roy McMurtry report, it says, and there's a floundering group of women trying to organize women's hockey in Ontario. And we as a province need to step up and help get these women organized. And that's where I was hired to work in the women's program. Now, that was only for not quite 3 years, but it was a very busy 3 years, because Ontario spearheaded the women's hockey program in Canada, and obviously Canada spearheaded the women's hockey program globally. So I think I have my footprint in the women's hockey program in the world right now.
You got that foot in the door, and then you went to see Shoppers Drug Mart, and that worked out extremely well.
Yeah, we thought at the time when we signed, of course, I signed the agreement, and it was a 3-year agreement. Shoppers Drug Mart said that they would sponsor, put a girls' team in every location where there's a Shoppers Drug Mart. They would sponsor a team, and they sponsored, but I think they sponsored for like $60,000 for 3 consecutive years. And they wanted the event to be called the Shoppers Drug Mart Women's Nationals. When we were organizing it, we really had no trouble with that, because we were just happy that the Nationals were going on. When we handed the contract over to Hockey Canada, they were like, oh no, like, we're inheriting this. But you know what? I was doing cartwheels when they signed that contract, because along with them came, other sponsors, a peanut company. I think Tampax came on board. Just a lot of other little sponsors came on board at $5,000 each. But, that meant a lot of money to a first-time event.
Yeah, you guys had some fun with the Tampax thing. Tell us a little bit about that.
I forget whether it was Nova Scotia or PEI. Everybody got a kit bag, and in the kit bag were pads. And so one of the times, I don't know if it was she came out on the ice or if it was the variety show, but she came out with her goalie pads on, and the goalie pads were always were just lined with these sanitary napkins, and she had a sign that says every goalie should be safe, so.
In those days, it sounds like you guys had an absolute blast. I mean, the celebration after the Nationals and everything else. It's like this had come together, and I just imagine the pure emotion of it must have been for you having accomplished what you accomplished, having that last championship game and then the celebration afterward. What was it like for you?
It was a high, Joe. To see the cup, being raised. It was the Abby Hoffman Cup. It was raised by the championship team, and Abby deserved the recognition, because she was my go-to person so many times when I ran into roadblocks, and she, it was just a feeling of complete satisfaction, like,
We did
it's
it.
over with. I was successful, and we did it. We did it, and at that point, we proved to Hockey Canada. Like, Hockey Canada was like telling everybody, like, there's no way this is going to occur. Like, they came in and they were not going to take over because I was too far down the path of this event occurring. But they came in as management and they were very skeptical. They were saying, like, this is not going to happen. They're not going to come in on budget. And I was just flying by the seat of my pants. I organized a lot of tournaments in my days, but I never organized a national. And we had the press boxes. We had dealing with hockey. I had never before put the logo at center ice. We had to do that. Thank God for Thelma Learn. She helped me big time. It was a learning process, but with our whole volunteer group from Brantford, they were just so committed to the success of the event that it doesn't matter who's doing it. If there's the passion and the commitment, it will be successful. We were not as polished as the other events that Hockey Canada pulled off for the women's nationals, the second and the third year. But you know what? We got the job done.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'm sure that they were expecting you to fall flat on your face, and then they could say, "I told you so." But they probably took some of the credit when things went very well and successful, and you got it pulled off. I'm sure that Hockey Canada was great. It was right there to say, "Yes, you're welcome."
Actually, Joe, to be honest, in the Hockey Canada history books, there's nothing of this. So the first thing I did was I sent my book to Hockey Canada, and Murray Costello later in life. I love Murray. He was a great sounding board for me. He was the president of the Canadian Amateur Hockey Association at the time, and I had to fight for the vote for women's ice hockey. They were very happy having me sitting there at the board level, but you know what? I just said to Murray, if we're sitting here, we have to have a vote. And the OHA and the OHL, like, how dare these women have a vote equal to ours, And the OHA president at the time just stood up and oh my gosh, he just ripped me apart. And I just stood there calmly and I just said, I'm sorry, but we deserve a vote. We are a national women's program, every bit similar to all you gentlemen sitting here. We deserve the right to vote. And when it was all over with, they gave us the vote in the national game. And Murray Costello came back to me and said, history will never believe that this conversation ever occurred.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, you talked about another situation, and it was with a superior who came on to you in a hotel room and ultimately hijacked your career. So just tell us a little bit about that, if you're okay with that.
Yeah, well, and I have tremendous respect for the gentleman, and I think that, to be fair to Frank, he probably, was not in a good place in his personal life at the time. And and of course, I was naive. I would never set myself up in that situation again. we were doing the Worlds. And in those days, Joe, we didn't have spreadsheets. We didn't have graphs. Like I had everything laid out in little index cards on the bed in the hotel room, and this is a flow chart, almost like what Trello is today and the platform, the Trello platform. And I said to him, we were talking about everything. And, I never thought of Frank, any other way, but as a superior and almost a father individual. And that day in the room, he said to me, if you came on to me, I would not turn you down. And I'm like, I just burst out laughing. I just thought that, I'm like, are you for real? And like I said, that laugh probably destroyed my career, because throughout the Worlds, I did not have his support. And I was very lucky to pull the Nationals. I did not have his support. I was lucky that I had the support of the local association and several members at the OWHA, but Frank had pulled out, was no longer supporting my endeavors. So it was unfortunate, and you know what? It's a perfect example of the Me Too problems that were happening. It wasn't just happening to me; it was happening to a lot of women in the sporting world, and we just didn't recognize it, talk about it in those days.
Yeah, well, it was. You say it may have destroyed your career, but also, by responding the way you did, it also gives you credibility, and at the end of the day, we all have to, right, be able to put our head on the pillow and sleep right. So, despite that, is there a message there that you kind of feel you could pass on as a result of what happened?
Well, I think that we all need to realize that we have to look at ourselves in the mirror and be comfortable with ourselves. And there's absolutely nothing wrong in taking a stand against it. Many athletes didn't take a stand against it because they were afraid of their careers being hijacked or their athletic days being over with. Honestly, I'd rather be living in a small one-bedroom apartment, working in retail, than giving in to somebody who is sexually trying to take advantage of myself.
Hockey Canada underwent a complete overhaul recently. Do you believe it was long overdue, and do you like the results?
Yes, I am thrilled with it. I am sending my book back to Hockey Canada because the first time it never received any acknowledgement. When I had my book launch, I spoke with the president of Hockey Canada at the time and invited him to it because my book launch was at the original Hockey Hall of Fame down in Kingston. And I said, if you can't make it, send your local Hockey Canada representative for, Southeastern Ontario. Nobody showed up. It was like, my interpretation was the launch of my book was not important enough for Hockey Canada to take the time to come out and support. But yet, when you take a look at the Hockey Canada website, there's none of my doings on the Hockey Canada website. And it's interesting. Brock University actually sent people to our website to get the authentic history of the women's game because, we are not being judgmental, and we're not having politics, arrive, play a role in what events we list on our website. And I think that Hockey Canada, I think once they get, some things in order, I think you're going to see them take the blinders off and become much more open to things that happened before, and of course the things that are happening in the future. Like the women's hockey programs and all the good things that are happening with the evolution of the pro women's program.
Yeah, certainly that is long overdue, no doubt about that. Now, hockey's been your life. You still played the game for a number of years, but you suffered a career-ending injury. Tell us about what happened to you.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, I was playing recreational women's hockey back in Tamworth, Ontario. Probably, one of the older players, but probably one of the better skilled players. And I went into the player dove in front of me as I was going to take a shot. I scored at it, but I didn't even notice it because she took the feet right out from under me, and I went into the boards head first, and I just displaced the vertebrae in my neck, and I had to have spinal surgery, which is lucky. After 6 months in the working with the trauma center in southeastern Ontario, I now just live with chronic pain. I'm quite functional, but it was a hard process. I tried to access money from Hockey Canada and found that the insurance program was not appropriate for working women in sport. It's only appropriate for young players, and yet they didn't hesitate to take our insurance money at the time. So it was a learning experience for me, and a life altering experience.
So at the 2022 Olympic final, women's hockey, 2.7 million Canadians watched that game. Would you say that exceeded your expectations from organizing the 1981 Nationals?
Oh yeah, but I'll tell you, I think that the women's hockey championships was the highest rated, I believe, of a sporting event in Canadian TV history, the Women's Worlds. And I, honest to goodness, believe that is just the start of what's coming down the pipeline.
Okay, what's the best advice you've ever received?
Don't give up. You talked about me being resilient. I just had people saying, don't give in, Rhonda. Don't give in. Just keep your shoulder to the wheel. And nothing in life comes easy.
I really enjoyed this, Rhonda. Thank you for taking the time to join us. Once again, the book is Offside, a memoir, challenges faced by women in hockey by Rhonda Leeman Taylor. I suggest Hockey Canada takes a real good look at this and incorporates some of this into their history books. And of course, your website, Offside, her story, making her story, and go there for information. And check out the Twitter site as well. Thanks once again, Rhonda, for taking this time, and it's been a pleasure.
Joe, the pleasure's been all mine.
Thank you. All right, we'll have more sports when we come back. Addiction Rehab Toronto is hosting the Language of the Heart Recovery Retreat, June 16th to 19th at Ecology Retreat Center in Hockley Valley. Speakers include Mike D. from San Bernardino, James O. from Buffalo, and Toronto's Roman R. and J.A. Cost is $400, includes meals, accommodations, workshops, meditation, yoga. To register, call Eric at 416-991-3230 or go to help@addictionrehabtoronto.ca.
Grill.
And my Costa Swiss pick of the week. Last week, I took the number 2 horse Smashing Pumpkins, who faded down the stretch and was fourth in Thursday night's first race. Now the Grand Circuit is underway. A look at Saturday night's third, the Some Beach Somewhere open pace for 3-year-olds. First division, 3-5 favorite. Fulton appeared to have things under control late. But check out the finish by No Control with James McDonald in the buggy. A nice upset victory at 4-1. Anthony Beaton, the trainer and part owner, the time was 149 even. That's a lifetime best. The 5-6 exacta returned $19.60.
We've seen him kind of have success off the pace tonight. James really got his engine pressed early. 25-4 first quarter. What were your thoughts the rest of the mile?
I wasn't sure after that, but I know he's a big, strong, tough horse, and he can take a little bit of that toughness. And he let Tyler go kind of relatively easy, I thought. And I was a little worried at the head of the stretch there when Tyler was getting a little sideways, and but we snuck out, and he paced strong right through the wire after.
Now, this week, I'm looking at Saturday night's eliminations for the Pepsi North America Cup, $1 million race. 3 horses stick out for me. Redwood Hanover, of course. Watch for a bounce back from Fulton. And Annapolis Hanover, who won a leg of the Some Beach Somewhere Open. Let's go $5 to win place on all those 3. For all the racing updates, visit Costa TV on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. Go to hpibet.com for your wagering options. Joe Tilley Sports is brought to you by COSA, Central Ontario Standardbred Association, providing a united voice for harness horse people racing at Ontario tracks. Check out your benefits today at COSAonline.com and check out COSA TV on Facebook and YouTube for all the latest harness news and live action updates. Live racing year-round. Go to hpibet.com for all your wagering options. Become a member today, and your first bet is free. That's hpibet.com. Addiction Rehab Toronto, Toronto's #1 alcohol and drug treatment center, saving lives, reuniting families. The only treatment center in the province to offer medical detox, treatment, sober living, and lifetime aftercare all in one place. Our unique and specialized programs are designed to equip our clients with the tools to successfully lead a life of dignity, respect, and purpose. Let us help save your life or your loved one's life. Call today for more information or to facilitate an intervention. 1-855-787-2424 or visit addictionrehabtoronto.ca. Guests on Joe Tilley Sports receive a gift certificate from Classica Imports. Top of the line imported men's clothing. Check out the Classica Essential Collection now. Go to shopclassica.com. Joe Tilley here. My wife Penny Claire and I recently took an amazing trip to Egypt and Jordan with Trip Oppo. And here are our top 10 must-dos. Number 9, a Jeep ride to explore Wadi Rum, also known as the Valley of the Moon. This breathtaking desert landscape has been used as a backdrop for numerous movies, and it was amazing to see it in person. I would highly recommend that you book your next trip through Trip Oppo. Call them today. We want to thank all the folks who make this show possible. These are friends, trusted business associates, and all-around great people. We highly recommend them all. Thank you for your support of Canadian and local sports. A reminder that the show is available on iTunes, Spotify, Breaker, Radio Public, Google Podcasts, Pocket Cast, as well as the Spanglish Network, Zingo TV, and Buzz TV Live. Also, check out the show on YouTube. There are lots of great segments there, past shows, some very cool clips. Like and subscribe. It's absolutely free. Thanks once again to Rhonda Leeman Taylor for being on the program. Thank you for watching. We'll see you next time. Do you want to buy or sell a home? Could 31 years of real estate experience help you? Why not speak to an amazing team that loves to overpromise and overdeliver? Aldo has a tremendous team of experts on staff. They are committed to making your next real estate transaction smooth and comfortable. Call 416-GET-ALDO or visit getaldo.com. Brian Gribben Insurance Planning. helping you solidify your financial future.
At BGIP, what we do that's unique in the marketplace is we show people how to spend and enjoy their money in their early years of retirement without the fear of running out. Also, we're able to do this without you having to change financial advisors. Please look us up at bgip.ca today. Let's book a 30-minute phone call to see how we can bring value to you and your family in your planning.
Call Brian today for all your retirement needs. We did. 905-686-5678. MNP, a leading Canadian national accounting, tax, and business accounting firm. MNP proudly serves and responds to the need of their clients in the private, public, and nonprofit sectors. Through partner-led engagements, MNP provides a collaborative, cost-effective approach to do business and personal strategies to help people and organizations to succeed across the country and around the world. With local offices in Oshawa, Mississauga, Burlington, and more, their team is here to support you. Visit mnp.ca today to learn more.